guys, Karalynn Cromeens, again with a Quick and Screwed podcast, and I'm glad you're here listening. And today we're still filming live from World of Concrete, and I have another great guest today, Brad Humphrey with the Pinnacle Development Group.
Right.
How are you, Brad?
I'm doing great. Better today now with you, right?
I know, it's exciting. The energy is high here at World of Concrete.
I know it is. Usually it is. That's a good thing.
All right, tell us, before we dive into all these
Yeah.
questions, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are now.
Okay. I was a contractor at one time, and after several years of contracting in the Midwest, Kansas City area, I got asked to speak at a conference called the World of Concrete. And I guess they must have liked it because I've been back, and I was given an award last year that said I've done more seminars than anyone else at the World of Concrete.
Oh my goodness.
Well, that just makes me old, right?
Congratulations.
Yeah, but
No,
that
doesn't
just makes
make
me
you
old. So it does show the gray hair, but no, it's been a great. This is a great industry. I love this industry. Obviously, construction is very special. But yeah, every year's been great, and you're right. There's a lot of energy. I just came out of a class, and it was high as a kite.
Good, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Love great energy.
Oh yeah, it was great.
It's better than talking to people falling asleep.
I know,
right?
right.
All right, so tell me about Pinnacle Development Group. What is that? What do you do?
Yeah, Pinnacle Development Group is my organization. It's a consulting firm. I have a couple of guys that do contract work for me through that are certified, but we do leadership development training, strategic planning, do a lot of strategic retreats and planning, but a lot of it is focused on coaching. I do a ton of coaching.
Gotcha.
And work with leaders at different levels on how to not only improve their leadership, and then we also do a lot of productivity and process improvements. We've got a big problem right now, and we'll probably talk about it, but we got a whole new group of workers coming in that have very little construction background. So there's a lot more teaching and leadership that has to be played.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So you say coaching.
Yep.
So what does that look like? Does an individual come to you, or are you coaching a business? Tell me about your client's journey.
Well, both of those fit. I mean,
Okay.
Sometimes it starts off with the company, an owner or senior leader would be in a meeting of mine, maybe even here at World of Concrete. And they'll call me a week later or something like that and say, hey, can you come over and I'd like to talk to you about my business. So we'll do that. It starts off broad. And then what happens is I sometimes start coaching the leader, the owner.
Yeah.
And then if the relationship continues, which a lot of times it does, then they want me to work with some of their senior leaders, both not only in the office, PMs and engineering, but also many times superintendents, general superintendents, and the foreman level.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. So where are you? So do they set goals, or do you set goals?
We do that together. Normally I come in, they know that, and that's a good question, because a lot of times I've actually been asked by contractors, hey, well, give us our vision, give us our, and I said, no, it's your company, not mine, right? So what I try to do is bring them to that point where they're setting their vision where we need to go. And I will tell you, not this is free, this doesn't cost you anything extra. Most contractors do not have a vision for their business, and that's a problem, big problem.
I know, and don't be wrong. I was there too when you start and own your
Yep.
own business.
Yep.
You're like working your ass off
Yep.
every day just to keep the doors open.
That's right.
And don't know where you're headed.
Yeah.
How do you change that mindset? How do you get them? Where
That's-
do you start, I guess?
That's really hard. There's a name that younger people probably have seen on TED Talks or podcasts, Simon Sinek. And
Yeah.
Simon's a great, he's not a construction guy, but he's a lot younger man than I am, but I just idolize this young guy. He's really bright. But he really does make a good argument that we have to know the why. The Americans, and especially contractors, are very good at what? If you look up the word construction in the dictionary, there's a definition that says placement of materials. We're really good at that, but we don't always know why we're doing it the way we're doing it, and that's the why. And so I try to help these owners. We did it today. I spent about 15 minutes of the workshop today talking about the why behind why are you in construction. And it becomes a purpose, it becomes your life mission, and it sounds hokey, but Simon would talk about you got to have the why, then you start talking about the hows, then you hit the whats. In America, or in a lot of construction companies worldwide, and I got a couple of fans over here that are construction guys, they will often tell you they fight the what every day. And think about this, I teach a guy what to do, but then he comes back and says, why am I doing it that way? Well, we haven't explained the why. So I think that's where I start. That's where I start to answer your question.
So you start with the why,
Right.
right? But then so you get the vision.
All right.
How do you get the team behind that vision?
Good question. Then what we do is when the owners and myself, when we come to agreement where we think a good vision is for the company, just went through this last week in a company in Peoria, Illinois. Now we start taking that to the guys in the field, men and women who support the company. Here's what the owner says he wants to see, he sees as the vision. Does that make sense? How do we make it work? Now we get their buy-in and participate. Most of it comes through participation and engagement. I still find that the company employees that stay with you the longest are the ones who have always felt like they have a part in the organization. If you can't do that, you got a big problem.
And so do you see, what changes do you see in employees or team members when they are unified on the vision?
Well, when they're unified behind a purpose and the vision, you start seeing more communication between the office and the field. The proverbial war has always been, the guys estimated, the guys in the field said, you didn't give me enough hours, didn't give me enough equipment time, it didn't give me enough materials. The guys in the office said, you guys are abusing what I gave you, just do it like I. Well, the problem is you got to bring those two together. And so what we do is we start talking about projects together. We start talking about, okay, before we make it formal, let's talk about how we're going to get this done. And do you have time for a real quick story?
Yeah, absolutely.
A good client of mine has a superintendent, wonderful guy, and he did something years ago that the company didn't even know he did. He did projects that were like 6 to 9 months in length. Mm-hmm. He would bring his project team over on a Sunday afternoon and let them bring their wives or their girlfriends, hopefully not both at the same time. But they would barbecue brats and stuff like that. And then when they got done eating, then his wife was awesome. She would take the gals there, and they would kind of go into a different room. And Steve would take the blueprints for the job and lay those out on the kitchen table, and then tell us guys, here's their next project. You guys get in there, look at it. You tell me, what do you think we ought to do? He would give them about 45 minutes to an hour. I attended one of these. It was so successful. He never ran a job that didn't make money, but the company leaders didn't know he was doing this. And when they found out, they felt bad because he was spending, $50 to $100 on food and stuff like that. They said, Johnny, brats are cheap compared to what you're doing for
Exactly.
us. We'll buy the food. So that's the thing that I think, Karalynn, you're talking about. We still have workers that need to be engaged and be participants in the process. If you don't make them a part of that process at some point, you're not going to have a crew.
And so, okay, I know you brought this up earlier.
Yep.
What about the young generation that really knows nothing
Yep.
about construction?
Yep.
How are you bringing them? How are you training this? What does that look like?
That's a great question because we have younger people and they have less experience than ever before. We're hiring guys and gals that don't know the difference between a Phillips head screwdriver and a wrench.
Yeah.
And so we have to start. You have to very much go to the back. Let me tell you what I'm trying to do with contractors. I'm trying to get them, I'm helping them in some cases, but trying to drive them. You have to have a training program. And I know contractors don't want to hear that because it means more time. And I've had contractors tell me, Brad, I'm tired of training. I train a guy and then he leaves me. Well, but here's the thing. If you don't train them, what do you have? There was a great bumper sticker, years ago that came out that said, if you think education's expensive, try ignorance. And there's a lot of truth to that. And that's why right now, real quick, in fact, I'll be talking about this tomorrow in one of my classes. We've got to start seeking out and supporting. In the United States, we have an organization called Skills USA. Okay. I was a board member in Texas for the last couple of years trying to rotate it off. We've got more young people, 18, even into their late 20s, early 30s, who want to go into construction, who are getting trained. And we ought to be sucking those people right out of those schools and reinforcing. We ought to be giving money. Mike Rowe, the dirty jobs guy, everybody knows Mike. Mike's throwing a little bit of his influence on the Skills USA. And it's just one of those things we have to do. We got to go to the military services and recruit people. We got to but we're going to have to get involved because we're not getting the kids coming out with training. We just don't.
Well, and then the average age of the construction worker is just getting less and less people are coming into the industry.
Well, and right now, I mean, there's a couple of resources to support this. Right now, construction laborers are coming in. They're not staying more than 45 or 60 days. That's culture. That's not money.
It's like, why do you think that is?
Because there's three things. Three things why they're, and I've done studies on this myself. We've actually worked with companies doing exit interviews to find out. Here's the top 3 reasons, and it's not money. No one's talking to me, no one's training me, and no one's coaching or following up with me. So here's what I've written a couple of books, not published books for the library kind of stuff, but books that companies can tailor. You need to have a 90-day plan. I did write a book that is on Amazon on 7 steps to employee retention. I'm not selling books, but one of those is called the 90-day plan. We don't have that. Contractors have got to develop. It may not be 90 days, it might be 30, but what are you going to do with that employee for the first 4 to 12 weeks? If you don't have a plan, here's what happens. Brad, I want you to go over there and stand with Steve, follow Steve, teach him everything you can. Well, Steve gives the boss, oh yeah, sure, and then he turns around, yeah, right. I'm not a babysitter, and now he's got me training. Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to do some training, or we're not going to have people come to work.
And so what does that training program look like? Is it something
number one, safety is always first, right? We got to talk about safety. Second of all, we want to talk about the tools, what we do. What tools are we actually using? Again, if you go back to what I said earlier, we're hiring people that don't know the difference between a Phillips head screwdriver and a wrench. You better teach them the tools. tools and equipment there,
Okay.
right? Then we start teaching work processes. And with them, we're not going to give them the most difficult task. Let's give them the early, easy stuff to learn. Most employees just want to know that they're learning. They want to contribute in most cases. And again, we're hiring people that have never even thought about construction as a career.
Yeah.
And we're losing people before we even give them a chance to see that they could blossom into, we may have a gifted operator, we have a gifted finisher, we may have a gifted, a rebar guy, that we're not even looking at because we haven't given the guy a chance to learn.
And they don't feel invested, and they don't.
No, what happens is we make him an assistant to Joe, and then Joe runs him around like he's a servant, and he doesn't learn anything, and he winds up quitting.
So it's really, in your eyes, if we want to build the construction industry, we need to become better leaders.
We're going to be better leaders, but leadership now requires training and education. And there is a difference. You train bird dogs, you educate people. And the education, back to the why. Education starts with why. Why are we doing it this way? And as I told even a group this morning, over 400 of them, hey, you need to define what you do and why you do it at your company, because you go to 5 different concrete flat work guys, 95% of what they do is the same.
Yeah.
But there's 5% at least that is probably their difference between a competitor. And again, it doesn't matter what the competitor does, this is what we do. And most contractors, don't have that defined. So I'm telling you, you got to document it, you got to write it down, you got to teach it.
Yeah.
And that's where you're going to start keeping people.
And so how difficult is it to come up with a training program? Is that something they have to outsource, or something they could?
Well, in some cases, I get some of that outsource opportunities, but I always tell folks, you can do your own training. Let me tell you, give me the easiest thing. We're doing it right now. Videotape your workers, and then go back. There's software out there.
Yeah.
Go back and do voiceovers. Okay, when you see the rebar being put in, notice how the bars are laying on top of each other before we tie the rebar. We can do all kinds of videos on that. Go back and do easy additional That's training.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But here's the deal, and I have fun with contractors on this. They say, we don't have time to train. No, hold on a second. I want you to do something. Call the local weather network and find out in the last year, how many days of rain did you have? Oh, okay, so we find out we got 36 days of rain. Okay. Now, I'm not God. I don't know if it's going to rain on Saturdays and Sundays only. Probably not. So there's probably going to be a Monday through a Friday where you're going to have a day canceled because of rain. Guess what? That becomes your training day. Well, we don't have anything. That's your problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So now you have
someone like you and put it together.
Well, yeah, but they can't afford to bring in people like me on the outside all the time. But my point is, you can do your own training. Do videotaping, do voiceovers. We got the technology, we got the software. You can do it in your own. A 15-year-old high school kid that's good with computers can do that for you.
And I know everybody's kind of got a little different why statement, but what are you finding? What is the consistent why in the construction? The people you deal with. I'm curious.
Yeah, a lot of guys get that confused with, I want to make money, I want to make a profit. No, that's goals.
Yes.
Why are you in this industry?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
And the reason I try to say, okay, I want to get you in touch with your inner self here, okay? Why do you want to be in construction? Because we know there's a tremendous amount of people who have quit construction and then they come back. Why did you come back?
Yeah.
I feel connected to the people. I feel like I'm contributing to something. Let me give you another example. Well, good GC in the Denver area, I love them. I won't name them because I don't want to embarrass them. They got a big hospital job many years ago. They were building onto the ward for the children's cancer wing, okay? I met the superintendent for that job. He was an unbelievable guy. Twice a week he brought his lunch and ate in the waiting room with families.
Really?
And I asked him, why do you do that? He says, Brad, I never want to forget why I'm here. And so when we give leaders the purpose, field leaders, you're not just putting concrete in on a sidewalk. It may be the sidewalk in front of a school. You're not just putting the foundation down for a building. A hospital clinic's going to go there. When we start letting people know, of all the industries that have a good excuse to have a great why and a purpose, it's us. Everything we build, everything we reconstruct, everything we redo is for the betterment of somebody.
I agree.
And we don't sell it that way. It's just a job. If you tell your employees it's just a job, you're not going to keep them.
No, I agree. So what did you think, or what do you think were the effects of COVID in the industry, and how are we coming out of that?
Well, it's horrible, except most of us were declared essential workers, so that kept a lot of our people from being laid off. But COVID has become an excuse for a lot of people. There's no doubt we have workers that don't want to come to work. You might have seen this too. Last week, 2 weeks ago, there's a report that I think there's 5 or 6 states where the average recipients of federal money and state money is like $100,000 a year. We can't compete with that.
No.
That doesn't even make sense to me.
I agree.
But that gets into another topic. But COVID did have an impact. I don't think it's much of an impact now. Most of the contractors that we have here this week at World of Concrete and that I work with, they're blown right by that now. They're ready to go. They never slowed down a whole lot except for the supply chain issues, and that was a big deal, and that still is a big deal for a lot of companies.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And how do you coach them to work through those things?
Well, you're really getting the secrets out of me
know,
now.
sorry.
I think the big thing is stay close with your suppliers. I just wrote an article on this because I'm so upset with how lazy some contractors are. They should be published here in the next couple of weeks, but the article addresses exactly that. Spend time with your material suppliers, negotiate the best deal you can, stay in touch with them. Even though they may not be able to give you a whole lot, they're going to serve you faster if you stay in contact with them. That's the best thing you can do. And then on the equipment side, this is something even the Caterpillar guys will agree with me on because they're the ones that bring it up. I'm trying to get contractors not to be so gun-ho to buy equipment. I know the guys here at the show don't like to hear that, but every one of these pieces of equipment can be leased.
Yeah.
And even the Caterpillar guys will say, we don't really care whether you lease it or buy it. It actually is probably smarter to lease it because there's so many, a lot of equipment is like our smartphones. We get updates 2 or 3 times a year. Well, equipment's the same way.
Yeah.
And so the bottom line is that I think guys get in trouble. A lot of guys and women get in trouble. Construction owners typically love metal.
Yeah.
And they love to see their shiny, lot with all of their metal out there clean and all that kind of stuff. The bottom line is a lot of it sits every day. Now, if you're going to use equipment every day, then maybe buy it for different reasons from a tax perspective. But with all the computer generation and the chips that are in all these pieces of equipment, it doesn't make sense to me if you're going to get updates and pay for it. Why would you pay for it? Lease it. And then get them to update it or switch out to another piece of equipment.
Absolutely. I know you. So what are you talking about? What are your talks about this year at World of Concrete?
Well, this morning was focused on how do we make more money on our productivity, right? And so we talked a lot about what I call the pre-start, the mid-job, and the post-job. It's not new for a lot of organizations, but most of them don't do anything rapid. Talking about pre-construction. What do we do in the whole pre-construction? Not just pre-construction meetings, which contractors know about, but what do we do before you start the project? I really preach a message. You got to have a no bad job mentality. What do not let your crews leave until you know they have everything on their trailers and trucks that they're supposed to have. I told the story this morning. It was true. I had a client a couple of years ago. I went to see him for the first time. They had 5 hot trucks. They had 35 crews, 5 hot trucks. What's a hot truck? A hot truck was the truck that you run stuff out because the guys forgot to get it. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, we can send guys 5-8 hours away to work, and they take everything they need. Why are we not doing that when they're working 30 minutes down the road? So anyway, so organization, that's one of the things. Another item that I'll be talking about big time tomorrow, I think it's a big crowd too, is on the recruiting, hiring, and retaining workers. Oh, it's huge. Well, it's the biggest gorilla in the room, right? And no one has one answer. I have many. Some of them work for some don't work for others. But I'm going to give them everything I can, everything from the way you evaluate candidates, resumes, applications, to what do you do. I share a little bit from my book on the 9 7 steps for employee retention. On the 90 days, I'm going to give away some of that kind of information. But the fact is, if we don't, we're just in a loss.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can you share one more key retention fact for employees?
Well,
Besides the why. I think the why and the vision is huge.
Yeah, that's huge. I think on the especially for retention, I think owners and leaders need to follow up a lot more with their new workers. I think you need to make 5 to 7 contacts in the first month with a new employee. If you'll do that, we've got to win these people over because right now they're leaving us for things like no one's talking to me. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense to me.
I agree. And so I've noticed this. Have you noticed the difference in the generation?
Big time.
The kids.
Yeah.
What are you seeing as the differences between?
Well, yeah, I've got millennial children that are overachievers, but a lot of millennials are kind of growing out of that immaturity, realizing they got to work for a living. But now we've got the centennial generation. They're calling the centennials coming up. Gotcha. Those are those 14 to about 24, 25-year-olds. And, they were proven to be born surgically with a cell phone in their ear, right?
Yep.
So the bottom line, we got foremen that can't even get guys to leave their phones in their car and their trucks. It's a different work ethic. I do think, I've been accused of saying, well, I think sometimes you want to baby people too much. Well, I don't know if baby's the right word, but certainly giving more attention to, probably more necessary now than it was when I was growing up.
No, I agree, and I think they're different drivers. Like my generation, and it was mostly money, right?
That's right.
Everybody wanted money.
That's right.
And now it's not. That's
No.
quality of life,
No.
days off,
No.
training. They want to,
You'll love this. You'll love this, Karalynn. A couple of years ago, there was an article that hit nationally hit. It said that the average age of the American male still living at home with mom and dad had been boosted from 26 to 29 years of age. Never marry a man that's 29 that's living at home with mom and dad, right? But the bottom line is, think about the ramifications of that. I told a story, this funny story. It's not true, of course, but it was funny. I said, when I used to hire guys, I'd ask them 3 questions. Are you married? No. Get married. Do you own a house yet? No. Buy a house. Do you have any kids yet? No. Have kids. And the guys would tell me, why are you always telling us to get married, have a house, and have kids? I said, because when you're married, you got a mortgage payment, and you got kids, you come to work every day. That's exactly right.
Exactly.
But it's not that case. That same guy is living at home with mom and dad, and he doesn't even have a house payment.
No, I know.
Probably doesn't have a truck payment either, right? And he's not buying his own food unless he goes out to eat.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Yeah,
this
it's
new
nuts.
generation.
Yeah.
We're just so driven. All right. Any last thoughts that you would want, the Quit Getting Screwed podcast and how not to get screwed in the construction industry?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if I'd use the word screwed, but I think the one thing is I do think that owners need to be a lot more aware. I'm real big on, as much fun, as you can tell, as much fun as I like to have with people. I do think on a serious note, you need to know what your costs are, you need to know what your budgets are, and you need to know how that is affected.
Yeah.
One of the things that I teach, I love Deming, Dr. Deming. Some of you don't even know who it is. Look it up. Deming was the quality guru. He was the godfather of quality. Everything we have today is really related to him as far as making things better. But Deming always said that the cost of quality, the cost of making a mistake is 3 times the amount of what it should have cost you to do it right the first time. Think of the consequences of that. When I run into contractors, either here at World of Concrete or when they call me later, I'll always ask them to send me their financials. They want me to get involved with it, they got to send me their financials. If I see a company that's doing a very respective gross sales, but they're not making any money, that's usually a sign of quality problem, usually. And so what I try to do, I think one of the big things that they're getting screwed on, they're screwing themselves because they're not looking at their own financials. They're not looking at what they need to do to make things better. And when you don't do that, you're going to lose. It's just a matter of time. It's a slow kill.
Yeah.
But if you have deep pockets, but it's still going to be a kill.
Gotcha. All right. Well, where can they find all your information if people want to reach out to you?
That'd be great. They can. My direct email address is Brad@Pinnacle, like the golf ball, PINNACLE, DG for developmentgroup.com. And you can call me at 214-762-4550.
Awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for
You're
being on the
awesome.
show.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Hey guys, this is Karalynn Cromeens. Thank you for listening to an episode of the Quit Getting Screwed podcast from the World of Concrete. Hey guys, if you need help, liens, collections, contracts, we do it all. We do it in all 50 states for a flat fee and a predictable time frame. If you want to know more, reach out to us on our website, thecromeanslawfirm.com, which is in the show notes. Thanks.
So you're trying to